Good afternoon. I'm Erin Dziedzic, the Director of Curatorial Affairs at the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art in Kansas City, where we're currently hosting Elias Sime Tightrope, exhibition organized by the Ruth and Elmer Wellin Museum of Art at Hamilton College, Clinton, New York. The exhibition travels to Akron Art Museum in Ohio and the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, Ontario, Canada as well. The distinguished panel today includes artist Elias Sime and author, anthropologist, and curator Meskerem Assegued, joining us from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where they live and work. Tracy L. Adler, Johnson-Pote Director of the Ruth and Elmer Wellin Museum of Art and curator of the Elias Sime Tightrope exhibition. And James Cohan, owner of James Cohan Gallery with locations in Tribeca and the Lower East Side, in New York City, as well as online. He represents Elias Sime among many other significant contemporary artists. I'll be giving an introduction to some installation views of the iteration of the Tightrope exhibition at Kemper Museum and show a selection of images from Zoma Museum, a 25-year-old dream inspired by the timeless and structurally sound vernacular architecture of Ethiopia and other parts of the world, established by Elias Sime and Meskerem Assegued in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We also had a chance on a research trip last April to visit with them, and I highly recommend it. It's an incredible, incredible space and has just so much joy and learning and art to be had there. I highly suggest it. Elias will illuminate his amazing biography for us following, allowing some insight into his incredible career as an artist. James Cohan, having worked with Elias for a number of years, will give us information on how he came to know Elias's work. And then the curator of the exhibition, Tracy Adler, will tell us about her impetus for organizing this major survey exhibition and catalog of Elias Sime's work in the United States and in Canada. And to close the panel, I also wanted to give Elias and Meske an opportunity to tell us more about their approach to Zoma Museum, their thinking behind this amazing project and where it continues to develop from here. I encourage you also to get a copy of the catalog produced by Wellin Museum in conjunction with the exhibition, as there is much more to know about Elias's life and work that we can cover here today. It's available at the Kemper Museum shop as well. One final note, please check Kemper Museum's website for detailed information on our opening process beginning October 10th and new procedures we have in place to make your visit safe and healthy. We look forward to welcoming you back to Kemper Museum or for your first visit, and especially to see this amazing exhibition. It's been up for a little while now, and I've had an opportunity to tour around it myself for quite some time, but I'd like to start sharing it with people. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go over some details about the exhibition itself, as well as some shots of Zoma, so we have a better understanding of what we're about to kind of talk about a little bit. So can everybody see that okay?
Looks beautiful.
Great. So this is the kind of entry to the exhibition. You have these really beautiful stitched canvas works. It's kind of an entree into the exhibition, and Tracy will kind of further walk us through some of these items. But what I really liked about this part of the show is that it gave us a sense of where some of this visual imagery is coming from, how the process has developed over time from stitched canvas to working with electronic Dietrich materials and various other materials over time. Here you kind of can see the next kind of visual elements that accompany the exhibition, which is a sculptural installation, as well as starting to move into some of the works that include electronic components. We had some of our staff safely using masks to make sure we were photographing these properly. One of the reasons why this was such an exciting opportunity for us to partner with the Wellin Museum is because we actually have a really fantastic Tightrope on the Edge work from 2016 of Elias's in the museum's collection. And the piece on the wall behind the sculpture is the work that we proudly own at the museum and take care of, and it's been in 2 exhibitions now, one honoring our 25th anniversary, and now included in this major exhibition that's traveling around the country. So we're very honored to be able to have this work in our collection and included in this show. As you sort of turn yourself back around, it really starts to open up the space, and you can see how beautiful these works kind of coalesce with each other in the space, but also the varying materials that Elias uses really kind of give us a sense of how we may interpret these works as aerial landscapes or very textural, kind of almost abstract-like works. Another kind of beautiful shot heading into the next gallery space. This was such a great opportunity for our team and myself to really use this space. We have very high ceilings, and so works of this scale look really incredible in this space. Here's a little detail shot of the sculptural works. This is a really beautiful sculptural installation called Bareness from 2014. And these are almost like, kind of like little abstracted figural vessels that are turned on their heads. And we can see that they vary in color, they vary in scale and size, and they sort of move really nicely across the space. Moving into this next area, we kind of flipped back around looking into the space that we were just in. This is kind of one of my favorite shots. It's always a really amazing opportunity to have these vista views of one type of installation work where you can see through to the other. Turning around here, I do want to make mention that the piece that's to the farthest, the work that is mostly monochromatic and gray, is a work that was actually made for this exhibition, and it debuts for the first time along with its partner pair, which we had seen in the previous room. These works are on view for the very first time. And the beautiful piece that has green in the center and very vibrant colors on the bottom and the top is a work that is part of the Wellin Museum's collection. Just such gorgeous surfaces, really nice opportunity to pair works together where you could see how Elias is using the abstracted forms and then gets a little bit more into figuration in the work that's a little bit farther down on the left. Here's a little bit of a close-up shot of the new piece. We had a really nice opportunity from Wellin Museum as well to make wall color selections. So each of the iterations of this exhibition in its various places has different colors. We move into this space. The piece that's farthest to the left belongs to the Royal Ontario Museum. So as they've also partnered with this exhibition, it's been an opportunity for all of us to include works from our permanent collection in the show. And this is the kind of final piece of the exhibition, and we all know these as the Twitter birds. And when we, one of the really exciting things about this exhibition is that we get to talk about not just technology, but communication overall. And here is an image that I actually took on my trip to Zoma. I couldn't believe that I actually took this image because it's such a gorgeous place. Zoma Museum is located in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and the mission of the museum is centered around learning, and the museum's aim is to showcase innovative and cutting-edge art and architecture in a vernacular museum where the old and new merge. It's an environmentally conscious art institution, in Addis that acts as a bridge between artists and architects from around the world to create cutting-edge ecological art and architecture. Zoma Museum is built using ancient yet still existing construction techniques and using building materials such as mud, straw, stone, wood, and cement. In 2014, after operating Zoma Contemporary Art Center in a smaller space, Sime and Meskerem bought some undesirable land that was being used as a garbage location in an underserved neighborhood in Addis, adjacent to the Akiki River, where a community of urban farmers distribute their vegetables to the city. This is one of the newer images. You can see that it's spring in Zoma here. Everything is quite lush. They cleared the land and renovated the existing mud and straw buildings. They were able to gradually acquire 8 other properties of different sizes next to the original plot of land. One of the properties had an existing school and dairy barn on it, both in extreme disrepair that has since been totally revitalized. Slowly, they're transforming the land and the structures, always being innovative and with great consideration for the surrounding communities. Meskerem met Alice Waters in 2006, who became a large influence on the preschool at Zoma with her Edible Schoolyard project. The Edible Schoolyard project is dedicated to transforming the health of children by designing hands-on educational experiences in the garden, kitchen, and cafeteria that connect children to food, nature, and to each other. An edible education places the child at the center of their learning and uses food to engage all aspects of the child's education. Through growing, processing, cooking, eating, and studying, talking, and thinking about food, students develop skills, knowledge, and behaviors that enrich their academic and non-academic lives, bolster their growth as individuals and in relationships, and cultivate meaningful engagement with their own health and the health of their communities, as well as the health of the planet. The clean water system that Elias and Meskerem developed is rooted in what Meske learned from her father, who had large farms, and from her own research and assistance from people over the years that she knows. Meske has provided some recent images of how Zoma looks now in the lush springtime. We just have a chance to see some of those. Oh, this is a new one. This is so gorgeous. The success of an absolute care, creativity, and ecological substance of Zoma has led to new projects, like this new design for a restaurant in the Entoto Mountains north of Addis Ababa. This is the image of the design project, and this is the image of the work in progress, which Meske and Elias will speak about a little bit later. And lastly, just for today, because there are so many more exciting projects that Elias and Meske are working on, here's just a few images of 3 works from Elias's Behind the Curtain series, which they will discuss later. So beautiful. So now I'm actually going to turn it over to Elias and Meske to give them a chance to give some insight into the beginnings of Elias's career, what inspires his work, and how it's developed up until this point. I know that's a lot in one moment.
Oh my God, yeah, this is, wait, let me go straight to this, but thank you so very much. That was I was looking at it as if it wasn't our project. So it was, the way you presented it was so wonderful. So thank you, Erin, that's great. So, and it was lovely to see everybody on the screen. Thanks to COVID, we're not there. So, but let's start with your question. So, Elias, dito የመጀመሪያ ኢንስፓየር ያደረገ መጀመሪያ እንዴት ነው ይሄን ነገር የተነሳበት ጥያቄዎች ናቸው። አሁን ስለ ስዕል ስለማለት ነው።
እንደዚህ ተነሳው ማለት ትንሽ ይከብዳል ይሄን መልስ በአጠቃላይ ለመመለስ ግን ያው እኔ ማምነው አንድ ነገር አለ ልክ ማንም ሰው ለአንድ ነገር መፈጠር አለበት ብዬ አምናለሁ
It's hard for me to say how it all began, but I believe that sometimes someone has to be, sometimes nature actually comes into play. So sometimes nature provides you with this need to be creative.
እሱን ሳስብ ሁለት challenge ነገሮች ይመጡብኛል
When I think about this, I think about two different challenges.
አንዳንድ ጊዜ ትዕግስት
Sometimes patience.
በትክክል ይሄንን ለመስራት በተለይ የመጀመሪያዎቹ ከክር ተነስተው እስካሁን ያሉበት ደረጃ ለመድረስ በእውነት ትዕግስትና ፍቅር ነው የሚያስፈልገው
What you need is, in order for me to start from this the yarns, the strings that I used to stitch to get to this point, it does take a huge amount of patience, and you need to love also. So love also plays a major role in this.
አንዳንድ ጊዜ ሳስበው ያው በተለይ ከተሰራ ወዲያ አንዳንድ ጊዜ ለራሴም ይገርመኛል
Sometimes after I finish the work, I'm amazed that it's done.
ብዙ ትዕግስት ስለሚጠይቅ ብዙ ስራ ስለሚጠይቅ
Because it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of work to put it together.
ወደዚህ ደግሞ ወደ ቅርብ ስራዎች ስመጣ ግን
The recent work, as I get closer, as I the recent work that I've been doing,
እሱ ደግሞ ኮሌክት ማድረጉ
the biggest patience is collecting the material itself.
ምክንያቱም ገበያው ወይም አመታቶች የነበሩ ሊሆኑ ይችላሉ
They have taken many years, in the market, for instance.
አንዳንድ ጊዜ ደግሞ ሌተስቶቹ ሊሆኑ ይችላሉና
And sometimes they're old pieces, and sometimes they're the latest work.
እና ኮምፖዚሽን እስከሚሞሉ ድረስ ኮምፖዚሽን እስከምሰራ ድረስ
until I complete the composition, until I have enough to complete the composition.
ስኬቹን ተቀምጦ ፕላስ ማቴሪያሉን እስከሚገኝ ድረስ
I put the sketch aside until I find the right material to express it.
እሱ ነው አርቱ
I think that's the art. That's the process of the art.
ስራው ላይ ያው ደስ ይላል ስራውን ለመስራት ደስ ይላል ግን ይሄኛው ትዕግስት ነው ስራውን የሚፈጥረው ይመስለኛል
Creating the artwork is fun. Actually, that's the play. That's where you have fun. But the process to get there is where you have to have a lot of patience.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you developed as an artist? Like what was your educational background? How did you come to decide that one day you would be developing a studio and making the work that you wanted to make?
እንዴት እንደሆነ አርቲስት የሆንከው መጀመሪያ እንዴት ነው አሁን ያለበት ቦታ ለመድረስ መጀመሪያ ስትነሳ እንዴት ነው ወደ ኋላ ስትመለስ
ቀደም ልናገር እንደጀመርኩት አርቲስት በመማር ብቻ አርቲስት መሆን በጣም ከባድ ነው አሁን በተለይ አሁን ባለውበት ደረጃ ሳስበው
When I think about how I started just from this position now, from this moment, I think it's hard to be an artist. You can't be an artist just through education. I think people have to be born to be artists. There's the innate or the nature versus nurture. So there is the nature part that comes to play here.
መፈጠር አለበት ብዬ ገምታለሁ ለማንንም ሙያ በፍቅር ሰውየው መፈጠር አለበት ብዬ አምናለሁ
I believe one has to be born to do for any kind of profession, for any kind of work that you love to do. There is something innate. There's something nature that you have to be that you have to be born with that in mind.
አለበዛ አንዳንድ ጊዜ አንድና አንድ ሁለት እንደሚባለው ሁሉ በቃ በተለይ በፍቅር ካልተሰራ በውስጥሽ ካልተፈጠረ ልክ እንደ ቁጥሮች ይሆናል የተማርነው አንድና አንድ ሁለት ብቻ ይሆናል ከዛ መዝለል አንችልም ያ ነው መዝለል ስንችል ነው ያለንን ተሰጥቶ ምናወጣው
Okay, so when you study these things, when you try to find them through learning, you can make them, but they will be 1 + 1 is 2, and you stay within that rule of everything is calculated in a properly measured way. But when you jump out of that is when you actually find out who you are, and that's when you know that something else is there to push you out of that block that you have to learn to calculate every artwork or anything. And so that's when the actual art begins. And that actually, then you know when you love it. And when you can't, when there's love attached to what you're doing, then it's you. And that cannot be taught in school.
ሁሉም ሰው ሊገባው ይችላል ብዬ ማስበው ምሳሌ አለ
I have a small example probably that might make it easier for people to understand what I'm talking about.
ልክ ፍቅር ሲይዝ የሚሰማውን ነገር ማሰብ በጣም ቀላል ምሳሌ ነው ምክንያቱም ኦርደር የለውም ይሄ አንድና አንድ ሁለት የለውም
Okay, an easy example is when you start falling in love the first time, when you start falling in love with somebody for the first time, the feeling that you have, there's no order there. There's no rules. Everything, none of the things you have calculated kind of doesn't exist.
በተለይ የመጀመሪያዎቹ ጊዜያቶች
Especially at the first moment when you get those feelings, you don't, none of the things you learn work.
ምንም ነገር አይታየንም.
You become blind. You don't even know.
እሱና እሱ ብቻ ነው የሚታየን.
That's the only thing you think about.
የሚቀጥለው ስቴፕ ማሰብ አልፈልግም.
So you don't think about, well, how am I going to solve this problem next, or how is the future going to be, or the past. Those things, time stops there.
ያቺ አይን የሚጨፈንባትን ሰዓት ነው ማሰብ.
I think about that moment when you're blind.
ንጹህ ነን.
Where you're clean.
ብዙ ነገር እውነት ነው የምናደርገው.
Everything is honest, everything is true.
ሁልጊዜ ትክክል ነው የሚመስለን.
And then you also think that everything is right at that moment. And that's art.
With that kind of drive and that kind of energy, do your ideas come out of this moment, of this kind of really special moment for you? Because I ask that because one of the things that I see so vividly when I look at your work is really this connection between the earth. There's a connection between the tactility of the work and how almost like the residue of so much time and so many places exist even within the materials that you've chosen to use. I'm wondering if within that kind of moment of experiencing that sort of esoteric love and energy and all these kinds of things, does that also kind of relate to the places that you've been, the things that you've seen? Like, do these resonate as abstract imagery as well, or do they still feel very kind of in that realm of love and imagined and energy?
አሁን ለምሳሌ አሁን ቅድም ያስረዳኸውን የፍቅሩን በዛ ስሜት ላይ ያለውን ስሜት ማለት ነው ለምሳሌ ስራዎችን ስመለከት አለች ከመሬት ጋር የተያያዘ ይመስለኛል ወይም ደግሞ ከተፈጥሮ ጋር የተያያዘ ስሜትም አለው ምናልባት የምትሄድባቸው የምታያቸው ቦታዎች በሙሉ እዛ ውስጥ ገብተዋል ወይ ነው ባጭሩ አሁን ምንነግርህ ጥያቄዎቹ እና ያንን በሙሉ ያስረዳል ወይ የሚለው
በትክክል
absolutely
ብዙ ስሜቴን አልቆጥብም ስራዬ ላይ
I don't hold back any of my emotions and feelings when I start working on my art.
ብዙ ጊዜ በተለይ የሚነካኝ
especially things that have touched me
የሚያወራውን
things that wants to speak.
እና የማፈቅረውን ነው የምሰራው።
The things I love is what I do.
ስለዚህ ብዙ ጊዜ እንደውም ለኔ አሁን ጥያቄ ራሴን እየጠየቅኩ ያለሁት ማቆም ነው ያልቻልኩት።
Right now what I'm asking myself is I can't stop. I'm having a hard time stopping.
ስኬቾቼ እንደውም ብዙዎቹን ታይሚንግ የለኝም ይሄ ምክንያቱም ስራዎቹ ትንሽ ትግስት ስለሚጠይቁና ፔሸንት ስለሚኖራቸው
the work I do requires patience and time, and I don't even have the time that I want to do the work that I want to do.
ስለዚህ ልክ ነው.
Yes, it's true. There you see the landscape, you're right.
መናገር የምፈልጋቸው ሁሉ የተናገርኩበት አለ.
There are pieces where I expressed everything I wanted to say.
ግን temporary ሆነ.
But they're temporary. I mean, temporary. They're about the moment. That's how I express it.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my unmute button. Are you? Before I go ahead and let Jim talk about how you met and give us a little bit more insight into your relationship together, I wanted to know a little bit more about how your work is so substantial and it feels so connected to humans and earth and ecology and all these kinds of things. Do you see them as very much a part of Zoma Museum, or are they separate entities?
ስራዎችን ከዞማ ሚውዚየም ጋር አብረህ ታያይዛቸዋለህ ወይ? ስራን ስመለከተው ስለ ኤንቫይሮንመንቱ፣ ስለ ሰዎች፣ ስለ ህይወት ነው የሚያወሩትና ከሚውዚየሙ ጋር የተገናኘ ነገር አለ ወይስ ራሱን የተለየ አድርገህ ነው የምታስበው?
ምንም ከስራ የተለየ ነገር ብዬ አላምነው።
I don't think there is anything that's separate from my work.
ምክንያቱም ላይፌ ዞማ ነው።
My life is Zoma.
ላይፌ አርት ነው።
My life is art.
ላይፌ የማያቸው ነገሮች ናቸው።
My life is what I see every day, what I observe.
ከዛ ውስጥ አይወጡም።
It doesn't really, it revolves around that.
ምናልባት አትሞስፌሮቹ ናቸው አንዳንድ ጊዜ ስራሽን የሚከቱት ከምታዩ ከምታስቢው ከተፈጥሮ ከተለያየ ነገሮች ይጠነጠናል ጭንቅላትሽ ውስጥ ያ ነው የሚወጣው ይመስለኛል ሳስበው።
It's this environment that you're in, your surrounding, and all the things that you're experiencing is what twirls in your head. So you express what you know, what you see around you. So it's all connected. And also, as I'm getting older, and the aging.
Well, thank you. We're definitely going to come back to both of you because I want to hear more about where Zoma is at now, what your thoughts about it are, and kind of maybe if you want to give us a little insight into some of your upcoming projects. But I do want to ask Jim if he could give us a little bit more insight into, how you two met each other. How did you meet the work before you met Elias? Like how did this relationship come into fruition? I'd love to hear a little bit more about because you're such a connector, Jim. You help the gallery really helped develop this amazing research trip that all of us involved in the exhibition were able to go to. So it's been very much kind of in the very essence of Elias and Meske's work, a collaborative experience, even as an institution that's hosting the exhibition. I've felt very connected to this whole project in a lot of special ways, and I'd love to hear about how you became connected first.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you so much, Erin, and it's great to be a part of this. It was about 6.5 years ago that a very distinguished critic and author named Lawrence Weschler came to see me, and he had an idea for an exhibition. In a very haphazard way, he sat down across from me and he said, the name of the exhibition is called Pillow of Air. And I was like, well, what's that? He said, oh, well, you know, that's the space between your tongue and the roof of your mouth where you've opened your mouth and you're in awe. You're sort of in total wonderment. And I was like, oh my God, such a creative idea. I love it. You know, but what are the artists that you're proposing to show? Who are they? And he showed me a number of artists, and it was, you know, anything but a slick presentation. And he pulled out a brochure that I think Meskerem and Elias had produced for the Goethe Institute, is my guess. And it had, you know, small pictures of this work. And I was like, Ren, I think your exhibition idea is great, but tell me more about this. And it just totally grabbed me. And it's one of those, you know, kind of intuitive experiences that, you know, we all have when you just see something that you're moved by. Fast forward, he introduced me to Mesky, and Mesky said, well, you know, we have a storage bin of material that is out in California, and, you know, I can help arrange for you to go see some things. And there I am in a kind of use store at totally anonymous, not art storage in any way, facility, and I'm alone in this room unpacking material and thinking, I can't believe this, because it is literally every art dealer's dream to find an artist who is a mature artist who has 20+ years of work behind them. And, you know, there's no guessing game here. We knew what he had done previously, and it was totally evident that there was a creative mind here that was desperately, you know, pushing forward at all times, and without any fear. And so I, you know, I think the next step was that I got on the phone with Mesky, and we had the opportunity to do an exhibition in New York of an artist who had never been seen on the East Coast. He had had 2 exhibitions that were one on the West Coast in LA and one in North Dakota, which actually they traveled. But apart from that, it was very little known in this country or to the art world that I knew. And you know, to date, we've now sold work to about 32 museums, and it's been about 6 years. And you know, the proof is in the pudding. Every time we put up a show, people come into the gallery and they have the exact same experience that I had 6.5 years ago. And you know, to see it expand and to grow and to bring what is this very unique vision to, you know, the art world is incredibly thrilling. On top of all that is that Mesky and Elias can't stop building, and they have to keep making these amazing architectural projects in Addis Ababa, which are just unparalleled, and they're jaw-dropping. And to see an artist who is so clearly talented in working in 2D and in discrete objects to then work on a kind of architectural scale along with Mesky is just awe-inspiring.
It feels very kind of in the details, like micro, but has expanded like quite quickly. I know that when we had the opportunity to travel with yourself and with Tracy and a lot of the other curators, one of the discussions that we continued to have was you know, how does this happen? How do places like this exist? And I think it's such a wonderful opportunity to be introduced to an artist who thinks far beyond that tiny material and makes it into really such a beautiful life's work, really, like with each object. I mean, the ability to dive into each of these objects individually within the exhibition is one experience. To be surrounded by all of them is a completely different and yet linked in experience with that as well. And then to also know that Elias and Meskerem have really developed this space of nurturing and this space of education, and that is linked so close to contemporary art. I think it's been such a nice opportunity, really, to see how art and life really do connect with each other in a lot of ways, and that separation for Elias and his career is non-existent, which is quite nice. So.
Well, and you know, what's interesting is that I think art is always a tremendous connector. And I always see it as this sort of beacon that pulls people together. And, you know, and having Tracy, who's always been a big supporter of what we've been up to at the gallery, she came in and saw the work and had a very similar experience to what you all had and what I had. And, you know, was so keen to kind of take it to that next step. And really, you know, that's what a career is made from, is that the curator who sees the work in the commercial context takes it to that next level. So for you guys to be able to share this work with the rest of the world is incredible. And it's really the power of the art world at its best. So I thank you both.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Jim. Tracy, I just want to say what an incredible exhibition. It's been a real joy for us to install the show and to get ready for people to see it. I want to know more about how did the idea of working with Elias and curating this exhibition, and also in conjunction with that, making such a comprehensive catalog, how did those two things come about for you?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me be part of this discussion as well. You know, it's so beautiful to see the works installed, and I wish I could be there in person again. You know, one of the things that you touched on, Erin, was about the experience of both Zoma and the artwork, and they're both immersive experiences. And I think that was probably one of the first things that struck me when I saw the work was two things. One, I would say, relating to Elias's point about patience, is that when you see the work, you're automatically forced to slow down, and it puts you in a mind, almost like a meditative state of slow looking. And so this temporal element, which has been touched on too by Elias and Meskerem, is also really important. And it really made me feel as though not only was the work important, but it also had an important message in terms of sustainability, in terms of engaging in a dialogue about the complicated nature of technology, and just the sheer beauty of it as well. And so, you know, as you mentioned when you were showing the installation images, we acquired a piece for the museum, and in the process, you know, I got to know Elias and Meskerem, and I was so drawn to the Tightrope series, and there really hadn't been a major exhibition dedicated to this whole body, basically the last 10 years of Elias's work. And I've never used the title of a series for a show, but it was just so spot on in terms of thinking about the tightrope being the balance between humanity and technology and all of the other types of tightropes that we walk as well. It just seems so appropriate, and so it really focused on this entire body of work using those computer elements. But then also I wanted to show some of the precedent works to see where he was coming from, and to show audiences where he's coming from as well, and see how the stitch canvases, you know, this kind of painting with yarn transferred into painting with electrical wire. and how, you know, there's a real continuity there and a real, just an extreme beauty to the fabrication of it. So, you know, this is just another emphasis for the audience to actually go and see it in person, because you really have to see the works in person. And one of the reasons why we put so many detail images in the catalog was that it was really important for me to understand, for audiences or readers of the book to be able to get up close and see just how intricate and how beautiful and how thoughtful and how many hands were used in the making of these pieces. And in terms of just generating a catalog, it was important that we have a scholarly book that acknowledges the incredible work that Elias has done, and there really hadn't been a major book before. So getting scholars to contribute, like Karen and Smooth, and also including a lot about Zoma as well as the exhibition. It was really a labor of love. So going back to Elias's comment about love, you know, you really, it was an integral part to the process.
Thank you. The vision for the show, I think, really helps audiences get to know a little bit more about the development of Elias's work as well. It felt very much like, in looking at the stitched works, that detail, that concentration of community that's left in the tiny stitches, and how that then evolves into using, again, materials of communication. Because when we think of, even when we think of fiber-based works, we think of storytelling through quilt making. We think of all of these different ways of communication. And I think that when I see the stitch pieces next to the other works, they just have such a symbiosis to them that it almost feels like a limb or something that exists within the space, rather than these very separate kind of series per se. They all exist together quite seamlessly. And I think that I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about, I know that the sculptural installation was something that came about from the research trip. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how an experience like that helps you really have to sort of recalibrate a couple of things, and how that work functions within the scope of the exhibition.
Well, certainly my process when I'm curating shows involves spending a lot of time in the artist studio, because for me, I really want it to be a collaboration, and I really want to understand their point of view. You know, I'm not just picking works. It's very much a collaboration with the artist. So, you know, ahead of the research trip, I went earlier so I could spend time with Elias and Meskerem at Zoma and in the studio, and to really get an understanding of the underpinnings of how the process comes together. And I had seen a number of ceramic works around Zoma, and I asked Elias and Meskerem if they could pull out more of these works, and they pulled out Bareness and installed it in one of the exhibition spaces at Zoma. And first of all, I loved the way that in a way it sort of bridges the 2- and 3-dimensional aspect of, you know, 2 dimensions of the artwork from the tableaus, and then 3 dimensions, the architecture. Also, the collaborations that Elias and Meskerem have had with artisans is really important. So those pieces are made in collaboration with artisan communities. And also the connection to some of those stitched works, which are Ants and Ceramicists series, that's the title of it. Thinking about ants and ceramicists as communities, right? Thinking about how ants work together, ceramicists also work together, artisans also work together. So I liked that connection, and also just the fact that it was a fluid movement. Again, sort of talking about how the earlier work influences Tightrope, how Bareness is also part of that whole dialogue of what's going on at Zoma. So I wanted to show as many facets of that as I could. I'm always very open as a curator. I don't go into it with a preordained idea of what I want to do. I allow the process to unfold. And I think that's why our collaboration was so successful, because Elias and Meskerem and I just had a really open dialogue and conversation. it was really quite beautiful.
One of the things that feels so important to me about this exhibition is also the timing. I think that the introduction of this work on such a large scale and in the form of a traveling exhibition and a catalog to a broader audience, but also timing with conversations about communication as well. I think that's so important that you are, in thinking about how people are communicating with each other. And especially given that like installing this exhibition at this time when communication has changed so much amongst how we function in the art world. I don't know, I was wondering if you could just speak to that a little bit in terms of like how this work feels so communicative, even in its abstract realm. There are instances and areas of understanding communication through iconic images like the Twitter bird, which kind of give us a sense of that immediate communication, right? Or that sort of quick communication, which is such a relevant platform that people are using these days. But also just in the communication of having to kind of work through the logistics of the exhibition itself during a time when installation schedules are changing and all those kinds of things. Like I feel actually such a greater connection to this exhibition through the need to like really get down to brass tacks with communication, and it feels so relevant to some of the themes and the concepts embedded in the work itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tightrope, right? It's like, that it is. It's about like everything that communication has made possible, but how it's also mediated our experiences, our lived experiences. And so, I think it works in the context because this is an issue that has been ongoing. And when you look at Elias's work, it's also like the history of technology is embedded in these artworks, like the ones you were talking about with the keys. Those are from like the 80s and 90s. We don't even use those anymore. So it also becomes this history of modern communication, really, is being traced through this entire process. And I think that, Elias and Meskerem, both through Zoma and through the artwork, it is about really genuinely trying to communicate, but also like, having your own experience as well. Abstraction leaves an open dialogue for your own personal response. So there's a lot of room for discussion. There's a lot of room for growth. There's a lot of room for personal relational experiences. And I think that Elias and Meskerem were really on the forefront of that. The world maybe has caught up to where they've been for a long time. But I think that the work is important because it does describe the complexities of where we are now.
Thank you, Tracy. Again, what a gorgeous exhibition, and I appreciate you being here to give us a little bit of insight into your process in curating this epic show. Talking about kind of where we are and where we're going, to close out our panel before we answer just a couple of questions today, I wanted to turn it back to Meskerem and Elias to maybe ask where is Zoma now, if you want to give us some insights into the important work that you've been doing there and your amazing thinking behind this project, and also a little insight into maybe what's next. What are some of major projects that you're immersed in? Because we definitely know that you're both immersed in major projects. that is something I've learned about the both of you over the course of getting to know you, is that there are always these incredible, involved, and important projects that you're working on. So,
yeah. Wow, where do we start? Zoma is, you can also add on this so we can both express, yeah. Zoma is lush now, and I'm always surprised to walk around. And there's been incredible, the management has been really doing a great job keeping it alive in our absence, because, for the most part, we're not in Zoma. as much as I love to walk around the maze walkway, which was my favorite thing to do, it's like a privilege for me to do that now. And so because I walk it maybe every so many months, maybe every 2 months or once a month or something like that, I see the difference. You feel the love because the gardeners have been doing their job. And it's even cleaner and looks even more, the plants are well taken care of. So it looks better and better. And then there's the, the water, because even the reeds that we grew to purify the water have now matured. So really now we get clean water, the dirty water that comes to the city. So it makes you happy to see it cleaner and cleaner as it goes to the river. And then we have a prime minister who's focused on green revolution in Ethiopia, and particularly the rivers, cleaning the river. And so having this major projects, I mean, it's the beginning, but it's really great to see that happen. So you can actually see, the river. So we're part of that project. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted because there's the sound coming from my son. I'm hearing my sound from another stuff. So the project has been growing because now we have the prime minister of Ethiopia who asked us to build more. And so Zoma have expanded to the Grand Palace. And there we have created this huge space and huge transformation. Similarly to what we've done in Zoma, the area was not actually clean, so we had to completely transform it. And then as soon as we finished that, or as we were finishing that, we were invited, even before that, we did the art school. We completely transformed the art school where Elias went. So the compound is totally a new place now. And then we, now on the mountain, on Toto Mountain, there we have a huge area that we have created into a village. So the whole idea was, what do we do with this landscape that's so gorgeous? And how do we transform it without touching the natural resource there? So when he first took us there, or he assigned someone to take us where he was going to give us as a gift for Zoma, because of his influence. I mean, he was also highly influenced by what he saw at Zoma. And when we saw that landscape, it was, how do we work on it so we don't disturb the nature there? So all we were imagining, at least I was imagining, and so we had that conversation on the spot right there too, was how do we create a building that's actually floating on top of this mountain? So the hills, the beautiful ups and down and all the rocks and everything, how do we do it without touching it? So we had to imagine pillars, large pillars, or columns, I'm sorry, they're large columns, so we can put a ground on top of the column so the natural landscape will remain where it is, so people can actually enjoy seeing what we first saw there. But in a little bit different way. Now you're under the shade of the building, so we have to think about plants that will grow in shade, so people can sit underneath the building and enjoy the landscape as well. So because it's a land that kind of holds, it's beautiful. It's just like it's like holding you. We have different buildings doing the same thing, floating on top of the landscape. But so, and by that we found out that actually there's so many termites there, which are so essential to the forest. And if we were to build with wood there, that would have been destroyed. So, or you had to be extremely careful on how to do it. Also, if just by putting different terraces and replanting the existing plants, just making them look more visually attractive. And at the same time, the road that's been built, the new roads that has been built for this tourism and this transformation, we found out that it was so important to put the terrace so to hold back the soil so it doesn't erode. And all that process was new way of making art with the land. And so that's what you see. So the building that you just showed earlier is floating. It's and also how do you make it so it doesn't even fight with the landscape? We have brought some artificial building there, and how do we make it so it actually remains artificial but also gives respect to all nature around it? No, that's what the new process has been. But in the meantime, Elias is in his studio. Also, because I spend a lot of time at the building site, because he has to continue producing because he's an artist at the end of the day. There's so much going on in his head. So we split time for the most part. He's also in his studio, but he also comes there to help a lot. And I desperately need him there for different things. But this is what has been going on in the past few months.
Well, I can see why you're not getting enough time to walk through the winding paths of Zoma then.
It's unfortunate, but right now, actually, it's always a privilege to walk around. But there's Bene who keeps it alive, and she actually takes really good care of the whole space. And there's the school director, the gardener, the main gardener, who really does a great job. Really, people have taken on this responsibility on their own. I mean, you can't pay money to get people's emotion and love poured onto this compound, and that actually is something touching, very touching. The ground would have dried had it not been for the love of the people, and everything else. Everything else would not have functioned the way it did has it not been for people. So it's really one other thing that happened because of this major projects that we're working on, is to see how the love at Zoma, and it really puts tears to my eyes. I'm very touched by that. Yeah. All the young workers that you've known, they're still there. I mean, the guards and everybody's there.
እኔ አንድ ነገር ልናገር ይመስለኛል እና
I just want to add something.
ተጨማሪ ዞማ የተገነባው ሁልጊዜ እንደምናገረው በፍቅር ነው።
As I always expressed, Zoma was built with love.
እኛ ብንሄድም
even if Elias, we're definitely not going to be around for too long. I mean that's life. When we're gone,
Zoma ይቀጥላል። ምክንያቱም
Zoma will continue.
በፍቅር የተገነባ ነገር
Anything that you build with love,
የሚመጣውን ሰውዬ የሚያፈቅረው ነው የሚመስለኝ።
I believe that the people who are taking over will also love it.
ምክንያት አለኝ። ምክንያቱም
I have a reason.
አረንጓዴ ነገር ማይወድ የለም።
There's no human that doesn't love green grows.
ምግባችን ውስጥም አይጠፋም።
It's our food.
ስለዚህ ሁሉም ይንከባከባል ብዬ ነው ማለት።
I believe that people will take care of it.
የመጀመሪያው ጉዞ ልክ ነው፣ አስቸጋሪ ነው።
Yes, the first steps were very difficult.
የሚቀጥለውን ግን በተለይ አሁን የደረሰበትን ደረጃ
But where it is now, where it has transformed now,
ይጣፍጣል።
it's tasty, it's very sweet.
ግን በቃው ማለት አይደለም።
I'm not saying this is enough for it.
የኛ መኖር ብቻውን አይደለም፣ የሁሉም መጠራቀም ነው ለውጥ የሚያመጣው ይመስለኛል።
Yeah, it's not just us, it's everyone else who what you see at Zoma, what made Zoma.
በፊት መቼስ ወደ ሌላ ነገር ልውሰድሽ። በፊት በተለይ አርት በምንሰራበት ጊዜ በፊት ሪሰርች በጣም ነው የሚደረገው። አርቱ ብቻውን የቆመ አይደለም።
Okay, let me take you back a bit. The artwork that you see, my artwork, is not something that stood on its own. There was so much research done behind it.
የዛን ጊዜ
Those days,
በተለይ Meski, ኃይለኛ ጉዞዎች በነበሩበት
when we were traveling a lot together, when we were traveling a lot.
አብረን ሄደን የምናጠናቸው መንገዶች
all the way that we studied all these places together.
በጣም ከባድ ነበር.
They were not easy, they were difficult.
የዛ ውጤትን አይተን እዚህ ስንመጣ
when we saw all the difficulties we saw there, and when we brought it here,
በአስቸጋሪ ጊዜ ያሳለፈ
since we've gone through all those hardship,
እዚህ ላይ የደረሰ ከሆነ
and after all that hardship, if this is the result of that,
ውጤቱ ያማረ ይመስለኛል.
I believe it will be beautiful.
So እኛ ኖርን
whether we live or not, whether we're alive or not,
ዞማ የሚቀጥል ይመስለኛል.
Zoma will continue.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like what you put into Zoma is just, it extends so vibrantly into all of your work. It extends into all of your other projects. You can certainly feel that in Zoma, and I can see why that sentiment's carried over into all these major projects that you've been asked to do over the course of, I can't believe it's only been a year, and you're doing so many major projects that I don't know what things they were in before, but it's so impressive to know both of you and to work with both of you. Before we end today, I'll answer a couple of questions that were posted on the Q&A as we were going through. One which I think is really quite interesting, and it's part of the story of Zoma, are what are the designs that are in the structures at Zoma?
What are the designs?
The designs in the surface of the buildings.
Okay, before we get to that, I really want to thank the guy behind you, Jim, for really taking a huge part in constructing and all the process we went through. So really, we don't have words to express our gratitude to all the work you've done with us, to all the hardship you've gone through with us. So thank you. Yes, the piece that's the sculpture or the molding that happened on the walls of Zoma. ስለሱ ትንሽ ጭቃው ላይ የተሰሩትን እንትኖች ማለት ነው፣ ቅርጾች።
ስለ ቅርጾቹ
እሺ go ahead. Something went wrong. Okay, I'm sorry. So the way okay, go ahead and start.
ስለ ቅርጾቹ እንደ ቅርሶቹ አሁን ሳስባቸው የኔ ውጤት ብቻ ብዬ አላስብም በጭራሽ።
It's hard for me to think about the sculpting or the molding that you see, the artwork on Zoma. It's hard to think that it's just me or my idea there.
ምክንያቱም በጣም ትልቁን መቃየ እኔ እንጃ ስንጀምር ሁለት ነበርን በትክክል መቼስ መናገርም እስከሚከብደኝ ድረስ
there was just the two of us who started. You know, at the beginning, yes, it was just the two of us who started.
የዚህ ውጤት
but what you see there, the final product,
ብዙዎቹም ሰው ቢኖሩ
there's so many people involved in it.
ትልቁ ግን በጣም እንጃ መግለጽ እስከሚያቀተኝ ድረስ
I don't even know how to express it. There is also Meskerem's hands in this artwork that you see there.
ልክ እንደ ተሰራው የእጅ አሻራ
just like what you see there, the fingerprint that you see, the ups and downs.
ልክ ተቀጣጥለን የገነባነው ስሜት ነው የሚሰማኝና የእጅ አሻራ ብቻ አይደለም
But what you see is not just the fingerprint filled to what you see there. It's a collaboration of work.
እሱ ነው በትልቁ መነገር የሚገባው።
That's what I want to really express.
ምክንያቱም የኔ ብቻ ውጤት አይደለም።
Yes, it's a product of.
በተለይ ምንም የሁሉም ውጤት ቢኖር.
There's a lot of people involved in this.
ግን ይሄ የቀላል የፍቅር ውጤት ነው። በተለይ መስኪ ትልቁን ፓወር አላት። በዚህ አይነት ስሜት ነው የተሰራውና አንዳንድ ጊዜ ስለ አርቱ ስገልጽ የኔ ብቻ ይመስላል። እሱን መቀበል አልፈልግም።
It's hard for me to accept that the artwork is just me, because it's just more than me. There's a lot of it in there. I have a hard time expressing it just as if it's my work only, because it is actually.
የሪሰርች ውጤት ነው።
It's a product of a lot of research.
የፍቅር ውጤት ነው።
It's a product of a lot of love.
ምን እንደምገልጸው እንጃ የላይፍ ውጤት ነው ልበለው።
It's a product of life.
የዚህ አይነት ነው መገለጽ ያለበት።
That's how I like to express it.
ፒሶች ማምን የኤልያስ አይነት ስሜት ብቻ አይደለም የሚሰማኝና አንዳንድ ጊዜ ይሄኛውንም ፓርት መገለጽ አለበት ብዬ አምናለሁና አንዳንድ ጊዜ
this story has to be told too, everything involved, not just the specifics of the work, but
look አሁን እንደውም እንዳጋጣሚ
you just showing me an image
ሲቀየራ ያየሁትና
I just saw it change right
እቺ አትክልት
the plant that you see right there
የመጨረሻው ትንሽ ነበረች
it really began very tiny when it was first planted.
በዚህ ደረጃ ያለችው
now just look at how much it's grown.
ልክ ምሳሌ መሆን ትችላለች።
It could be an example.
ዞማም እንደሱ ነበር።
It's like an example. Zoma was just like that.
መጀመሪያ ከትንሹ
it was tiny.
ዛሬ ልክ ይሄንን ፈካ እንደሚለው
ነው just like what you see on this
እዚህ ላይ ይበቃል ብያለሁ።
I don't believe this is the end of it.
ምክንያቱም ዞማ እንደውም ከዚህም የሚቀጥል ይመስለኛል።
I feel that it will continue.
ያው በእርግጥ ስራ ይበዛብናል ግን ይቀጥላል ብዬ አምናለሁ። ልክ እንደ ካክተሱ ስሜት
yeah just like the feeling of the cactus it will
እዚህ ላይ የቅድሙን ለማዋሃድ ጥያቄው እዚህ ላይ
just to now to bring the question you have on this
የአንድ ሰው ውጤት ብቻ
yeah it's a product of more people.
ያፈሩ
the soil, the water is involved.
የሰዎቹም
and everybody else, all the people.
የጠቅላላ ስሜት ነውና አንዳንድ ጊዜ ያን ሲገለጽ ላይ እዚጋ ኤልያስ ብቻ አይነት ስሜት ሲሰማኝ ይሄ ልክ አይደለም በሚል ብዙ ጊዜ አቋርጣለሁና ይሄንን መግለጽ ፈልጋለሁ።
I just want to express it, the artwork, the wall piece in this context.
I think thank you so much. I think that's such a wonderful sentiment to end on in terms of how you both see this work and the wonderful space at Zoma as really a collaborative community area. So I think that's all we have time for. We're a little over our allotted time that we said we were going to be on or live today. So I also want to be mindful of the time that people took kind of hopefully during their lunch break to hear each of you speak about the exhibition and about all the exciting projects going on at Zoma and around the world for both of you and for everybody else. So if anybody else wants to chime in and say anything else before we close out today, it was so nice to see all of you. I hope that anyone watching or was watching earlier has an opportunity to come to the Kemper Museum to see this beautiful exhibition that Tracy curated. It's been a joy to host it here at the museum, and I'm looking forward to welcoming people back.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you, Erin, and congratulations. And look forward to seeing it in KC and many other places.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
And everyone, thank you all
Thank
for
you
all this.
all.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah, there we go.
Namaste Galano.
በጣም
እኛም
እናመሰግናለን።
እናመሰግናለን።
ሁላችሁንም እንወዳቸዋለን።
We love you all.
እናመሰግናለን።
And we're gratitude. We want to thank everyone.